welcome to the fire pit installation video. In this video we talk about the basics of a fire pit installation, from cutting the caps to if you're running a gas line or whatever. We defer a lot in this to your local plumber and what they're going to have to say about how the gas lines get run, or a propane line, whatever the case is. You need to reach out to them and talk to them. They are the professionals in that space. So we defer a lot to them again in regards to permits and any of the nuances regarding that kind of installation. So we're going to get a great overview on this, lots of great basic tips and tricks, and we hope you enjoy it. We've got our conduit for our gas line buried here. Now there's a lot of caveats and details with this. First and foremost, it's going to vary. The depth that thing is required to be in is going to vary by code, by jurisdiction, by your region you live in, whatever. So make sure that you are following your code there. Out here in rural, rural areas, a little lighter on the requirements, but at a minimum, that's going to still be buried 12 inches in conduit. Once we get out into the yard, we're going to get 18 inches deep. But again, that varies everywhere, so do not go off of this for your zone. Check with your zoning code and any of your gas codes and plumbing codes, stuff like that. Refer to a plumber, a trained professional in such matters. But we've got that conduit in there. You want to make sure when you do that, if you're going to rough in for your plumber, again, per your plumber's specifications, we use a 2-inch conduit on this stuff with as big a sweeping turns as possible and minimal turns. Your plumber will curse you if you put in a bunch of bends in this thing, because they've got to snake that pipe, the gas pipe through there, and if they got to pull and push and work real hard, and we know this by experience, they're going to curse you. And so you want to make that as easy on them as possible. So with that said, we've got that conduit in there. We've got it bedded in with that number 9 stone. It's what that allows for is you backfill that in there. The number 9 stone is primarily compact as it sits, so we'll tamp that just a little bit, but that is filled all the way in around that pipe, so we don't worry about trying to compact on the underside below the spring line of that conduit. And a spring line is the portion from halfway on down around the bottom part, so that's below the spring line of the pipe. So it's tough to get that compacted. Usually that little number 9 stone is a great bedding stone that's really pretty standard in any time you're burying any kind of pipe or conduit. One thing too about fire pits is when you're doing a gas fire pit install, again with this gas line situation, I want to drive home the importance of knowing what is code or required in your municipality or wherever you're working, because sometimes they're subject to inspection by inspecting agent from the city or municipality, whoever, and they're going to want to see the trench open and excavated with the gas line in there prior to being backfilled, and then they want to approve that, approve the installation of the gas line, and approve the backfill. So they want to see it 2 or 3 times possibly. So that's why it's really important you have a competent gas line installer or plumber for that aspect, and you fully understand that, because there's nothing worse than putting the work in, the inspector showing up and saying, I have to see every aspect of this gas line now, and you have to dig it up and redo it because I can't approve that it was done to city standards. So just be sure that whoever you're dealing with this stuff knows all the rules and bureaucratic rigmarole when it comes to installing gas or propane fire pits. We've got the fire pit cut out. As you saw, the guys like to pull the pieces out because of that tight radius. If you got a saw with a smaller blade on it, it'll make that radius cutting a lot easier. We've got 14-inch blades on those big saws. One of these days we'll get around to getting a saw with a smaller blade on it. We've got those cut out. We've got this set out. We like to get that fire pit down inside and below the pavers for a handful of reasons, primarily for the aesthetics. We like that it looks a little more integrated into the fire pit itself, like it's not just setting on top of the pavers. It's probably got some structural value there as well, because it's embedded into just like your standard wall principles, but we like that look, so that's how we cut it in there. And we're going to show you now how we get this level and ready to set pre-manufactured radius block. Another consideration is, what is the final elevation of the fire pit itself? I would have that discussion with the client, or definitely in the design meetings, of how high of a fire pit are you looking for. We prefer ours to be a little bit lower, a little more recessed. We like the aesthetics of that fire to be very visible, so we don't want the chimney or smokestack effect. We don't want that thing up 3 or 4 courses high. Generally our fire pits, especially wood burning fire pits, it's a little different in this case, but especially our wood burning fire pits, to be only about 12 to 14 inches tall, give or take. So we like those lower fire pits so you don't have this big chimney or smokestack effect looking structure. Laying out our fire pit here, we got our radius cut perfectly just right. So the guys did a great job on that. Now we're setting in this fire pit block here, just double checking it's level and true, clear across the thing. And we'll add some 9s as we need to get those leveled up. Fire pits for gas and propane will need breathing holes for them. Be sure to check the specs for the products and features and materials you're using, and talk to your plumber about what they need as far as breathing and gas escape and exchange out of a fire pit. Wood burning fire pits, it's debatable how much, if any, gappage is needed for air movement. But when it comes to gas and propane, you need to talk to your plumber about what kind of gaps you need in those blocks so the air passes through for safe combustion. Initial course of fire pit stone is set and set perfect, nice and level, just the way we want it. You can see how it changes across the slope of the patio. So again, another reason for the embedment in the inset of the fire pit itself. Now it's just going to come down to gluing and stacking our subsequent courses, and our air gaps per our plumber's request and per code as necessary. We'll be getting the fire pit going up. Fire pit, all our courses are up. We've got our gaps cut in as prescribed for airflow. When it comes time to glue these together with each course, whatever glue you're using, just follow the recommendations for the thickness and quantity of glue. We'll generally do 2 bands that are about like the size of a toothpaste strip of glue, if you will. It's about the size of your pinky, maybe that big. Couple things and a couple different ways to do that is to slide your block down on there on that glue, slide it back just a little bit to get good engagement. Another option is to set it down on there, pick it up, and then put it back down, and that gives you more surface and air contact, more bubbles in there, and squeeze it back down on there so you get better glue contact that way. So a couple different schools of thought on it there. We generally will take that block, set it a little over the front, and then slide it into position to smear that glue to get really good contact that way. So with this fire pit, this is a Unilock Brussels dimensional small taper unit, which is a perfect fire pit size for wood burning or gas fire pit like this. We generally recommend to run a steel liner inside of this just to help protect the concrete block itself. You want to make sure whatever fire pit product you're using is high quality and rated for fire, so definitely check with your manufacturer on that. And then we're going to put a capstone on this. Another thing too with this, it's a tapered block, so we're not custom cutting each block. It's made to be this specific circle. It's going to be faster on your install, obviously, and it's the only way to go in my opinion. We've custom cut fire pit block in. It's horrible. It's a lot of cuts. Ideally, you want to get something that's made for a kit like this. On this fire pit, we're putting in a black single nose, full nose coping. It requires a lot of cutting, so you want to make sure you've got that time allocated for it and a good solid blade. We're going to be giving you the rough dimensions for the amount of cut you need off that, and we'll show you how we do that here. Fire pit coping is now cut in. It's all good. We're going to shift a couple things. We've got a little bit of a gap here on this first one and we don't like. We're going to recut that, but otherwise everything butts up really nicely. We're very happy with it. Obviously dirty from wet cutting. That's one of the detriments of wet cutting, is it's a really messy process, but it's better than throwing the dust everywhere on a job site. We used, again on this one, this is a single full nose. A lot of folks call it bull nose. It's technically a full nose. Bull nose is where it's flat and then just has one corner that is beveled, or or to a radius, let's say. This is a 6x12 unit. This is 2 3/8 or 2 3/4 thick. It's going to vary by the manufacturer anyhow, but what we have found for this kit to work right on that radius for this particular fire pit is cutting 1 1/4 inches off of each of the tails of the block here up to the very crest of the nose here. So we're going to cut that portion off just like that. And that's something that's taken us a little while to get, I say perfected loosely, but that's been what we've done there. Sometimes, like in here, we actually had a little snafu where we had to customize. We had to change a little bit of the cuts on these to get that to fit in there just right. That happens. You're cutting with saws that are not the most accurate of all the cutting devices we have, and still for doing it by hand is actually a really incredible amount of work that takes a lot of diligence. So take your time with those. It's going to take a while to get the skills together to really do those perfect. So you want to make sure you're budgeting plenty of time, material to do these and get them just right. The capstone is a great feature, and again, in the name capstone, it's the finish piece to a fire pit. Without this, the fire pits are pretty bland and drab. The the capstone, whatever you make it out of, natural stone, whatever, you want to make sure that it's capable of being exposed to fire. Again, talk to your manufacturers about that. You might need to put in a heat dispersion ring in there, a steel ring, filled with some pea gravel or lava rock or whatever. This being a gas fire pit, this whole core will be filled up with just some filler material. We're ready for our plumber to come in, get all our gas connections hooked up, build this thing up just the way we like it, and get it going. We'll see that in a couple days. Fire pit capstones, another part of this is if you use something much over a 6-inch wide block, or anything wider than that, it can tend to get real choppy and chunky looking. So the smaller the product is, or the more you saw it down to a smaller section, is going to give you a cleaner radius, a cleaner outer circumference. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to cut down block that's 12 inches or whatever, it's going to get pretty chunky and choppy. So just keep that in mind in your design. And so while this thing is completely filthy, we're going to do a whole project wash down, which is something we put into our projects, and it's pretty much a necessity. So we're going to come in once this project is done, prior to our sanding and all that other stuff, clean this thing up really nice with some hardscape cleaner and get it looking pristine again. So a few different ways that you can figure out how to measure your block like this is to get this laid against your existing radius, which would be, just imagine if this were sitting on top of that, you know, the fire pit stone itself, and you can do an overlay like this and start to get a handful of different measurements this way, telling you what you need to cut out of each block. So if you were to lay out this on continued around just like this, all right, and then you would lay this on top like that, so it's all perfectly aligned all directions, and then you would take your marker and you would mark like this, and like I said, you would mark like this there, that there, and then on the next piece like that, it would tell you what you need to cut out. Now this is going to get you a little choppier effect because this will be a full piece now sitting in here, and it's going to be a little choppier. So that works a little better on like longer radius, maybe around like the seat wall or whatever. So we're going to measure this gap across here, which is 3.5, and we're going to split that between the two, which is going to be 1 3/4 inches. So what we have learned though on this kit is you know, marking it 1 3/4 inches there, so that's each, you know, splitting that across there. We take that line, and now we're going to do that across there, and that gets us a real good good radius here, which really gets close to what we have found works once you take this off of both sides, 1 1/4 inches, again on a 52-inch diameter fire pit. So a lot of different ways to figure this out, but that's the way we do it on these things. But you're just going to pretty much measure that gap and transfer it back, considering the whole thing overall. In a traditional wood burning fire pit such as this, if we have our steel liner in there for a heat diffuser, in the bottom of this we're putting a fire rated clay brick in the bottom now. The reason being, it helps just make it a little easier for when clients are cleaning out the ash out of the fire pit. They've got something to scrape, you know, a little shovel across or whatever, instead of it just being a stone bottom like this. When it comes time to glue these caps, a good rule of thumb that we have found is to pull up about 3 caps at a time, 3 pieces at a time to glue. So ideally you want to get this laid out and get it all centered and just right, and then we're going to glue. So we're going to get it all laid down. We're going to pull off 1, 2, 3 pieces, and we'll kind of track it like this. We know we're working between those 3 pieces. We'll pull them off, put down our 2 beads of glue, set that in there, get them just right, and then we'll move our station kind of like that. Just that way you keep track, helps you not get lost in, I think there's 37 of those units in there. So little trick there for when you're gluing those in. One of the things you'll have to do on this to install 4 is hammer drill out a hole for the key that runs the gas supply here in the fire pit itself. So keep that in mind. Mr. Bo had a great tip of making sure you get some painter's tape and some stuff down to contain that concrete dust as much as possible, because it'll stain your poly sand especially. So Napoleon says, generals win battles, logistics win wars, and it's the same on a job site. It's a battle going on. We love to have things set up on job sites to make us as efficient as possible, and as much as we can get our guys to adapt to the more efficient things that we want to do. We like having things like a job table here. This is just an old metal table. It's great for laying your plans out on it. The guys' drinks, some tools. We've got a whiteboard here that I love having on a job site for people posting punch list items that they know need done, so nobody forgets it. This little electric or battery powered blower, just to grab it and blow things off real fast. It's stuff like that, we want it arm's reach, real handy all the time. We want it setting up on something. We don't want to have to bend over to pick it up. Sounds crazy, but anything like that you can eliminate. So having things like this setting nearby at waist height that's easy and quick to grab so we can blow off, prepare the next course of block or whatever. Those are the kind of things we want to do. Also things like the porta-can, the portable restroom on site, that's really important to us. We don't want our guys driving in town or driving down the road to use the restroom or going off in the woods or whatever, We don't want that. So we pay by the month for a portable restroom to be on our sites, and it saves us money in the long run. Keeps guys on site and more productive. Our tool trailer and hardscape trailer, we love having that thing on job sites as much as we can get it on job sites. Again, it leaves things more accessible at the end of the day, and at the beginning of the day for guys to pull tools out instead of coming clear from the road, as much as we can avoid that, as much as seasons allow. We want to make sure we have a way to dispose of a bunch of trash, a bunch of debris, things like all the pallet packaging, all of the drink bottles that the guys inevitably consume through the week, pizza boxes, you name it, or even like the boxes of these lights, stuff like that. We want great big trash cans with bags in them. They're easy to get rid of, wrap up, throw away at the end of the day. So any little thing you can think of that's going to speed up jobs, and it's all in that little stuff that affects too how much productive time we actually have on a job site is a big deal. I've got a whole list of things here. Just how you set up your site, making sure your logistics make sense, make sure aggregates are as close as possible, make sure you like this soil pile. We were fortunate to be able to stage and store this excess cut pile right here. So we're going to grab skid steer here in a little bit. We're going to backfill against that bench structure. Anything as close as possible, all the better. Other things we wanted to talk about here was tool pouches. As much as I can get my guys to do it, we love having it when they're wearing tool pouches. Simple stuff, even just for pens, paper, making notes, cutting utensils, cutting markers, always having a tape measure on their hip. Anytime somebody says, where's my tape or where's my marking pencil, that's wasted time, and we don't want that. So we're really working on company culture to make sure guys are constantly wearing their pouches that also have all their safety gear on it and all that, so they're not spending, it's insane how much it adds up, just guys looking for little items here and there all day long. Glasses, earplugs, headphones, you name it. Any of that kind of little bull crap you can avoid and eliminate in your company, you're going to put people towards more productive time. That's the big thing. Another big item is having guys show up on site as much as possible, or drive to the site and meet there and clock in there and get their 8 hours of time in on site as opposed to drive time. So for bigger projects like this, as much as we can, we have our guys meet on site. Well, maybe the foreman or the project manager will grab a truck and whatever he needs from the shop, and he'll come to site, and the rest of the crewmen are going to meet and clock in on that site. They still get their hours in, and it's all in productive time instead of windshield time. That's a game changer in your company if you're not doing that now. So keep that in mind. I hope you enjoyed and got value out of the fire pit installation video. Reach out to us at the Hardscape Academy if there's any other videos you'd like to see us create that'll make training on your hardscape projects even easier.